Have you ever felt like the more you care about someone, the less they seem to notice? You're always the one reaching out, making plans and showing affection, yet instead of appreciation, you're met with distance. It's frustrating, it's confusing, and it hurts. But here's the paradox. The one who loves you the most often ignores you the most. Not because they don't care, but because of deep-rooted psychological patterns that shape how we value people and relationships. This isn't just bad luck or a coincidence. It's a phenomenon driven by human nature, attachment styles, and even subconscious fears. And once you understand why this happens, you'll start to see relationships, romantic or otherwise, in a whole new light. So why does this happen? Let's break it down. The scarcity versus abundance effect. Why we take people for granted. The psychology behind it. At our core, human beings are wired to crave what is rare and overlook what is constantly available. This psychological tendency, known as the scarcity versus abundance effect, influences everything, from the products we buy to the relationships we cherish or take for granted. How this plays out in everyday life? Think about it. When a new iPhone is released, people line up for hours, desperate to be among the first to own it. But months later, when the same phone is easily available in stores, the excitement fades. When a limited edition sneaker drops, demand skyrockets. But once the hype dies down and the shoes become just another pair in the closet, they lose their magic. This psychological pattern doesn't just apply to material things, it applies to people too. How it affects relationships. In relationships, when someone is always available, always answering immediately, and always showing up, our brain stops perceiving them as special. Their presence becomes predictable, and what is predictable is often undervalued. On the other hand, when someone is harder to reach or appears slightly withdrawn, we subconsciously view them as more valuable. Their time and attention feel like a privilege rather than a given, making us more eager to seek their validation and affection. This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's simply how the human mind works. We place a higher value on things and people that feel exclusive, uncertain, or hard to obtain. Understanding this concept can help us become more mindful of our own behaviors. Are we neglecting those who are always there for us? Are we chasing those who pull away simply because they seem harder to get? Recognizing this pattern allows us to approach relationships with greater awareness, so we don't take for granted the people who genuinely care about us. The reciprocity gap. When too much effort backfires. The psychological principle at play: human relationships thrive on balance. When both individuals invest equally, there's a sense of mutual appreciation and effort. But when one person consistently puts in more energy, more texts, more check-ins, more planning, the other person naturally invests less. This imbalance isn't always intentional or malicious. It's simply how human dynamics work. When effort becomes one-sided, the person receiving it may start to take it for granted, leading to emotional complacency. How this plays out in everyday life? Example: the one-sided friendship. Imagine two friends. Friend A always initiates plans, checks in first, and makes the effort to stay connected. Friend B responds but rarely reaches out first, knowing that friend A will always take the lead. Over time, friend A may start feeling unappreciated and exhausted, while friend B may not even realize they've become passive in the relationship. The more one gives, the more the other withdraws. Why this happens in all relationships? This pattern isn't limited to friendships. It plays out in romantic relationships, family dynamics, and even workplace interactions. In romantic relationships, one partner might constantly express love and plan special moments, while the other grows accustomed to receiving without reciprocating. In families, one sibling or parent may always be the problem solver, while others rely on them without offering equal support. In the workplace, an employee who always volunteers for extra work may find that their colleagues put in less effort, assuming that person will always pick up the slack. The core issue? Effort without challenge leads to emotional complacency. When something or someone is always available and giving, we subconsciously stop feeling the need to put in effort ourselves. The fix: how to restore balance. If you feel like you're the one constantly giving, here's what you can do. Stop overextending yourself. Give others the space to step up. If you're always the first to text, pause and see if they reach out. Let effort flow both ways. Relationships should be a two-way street. If you're the one always making plans, take a step back and allow the other person to take initiative. Set boundaries. Being available 24/7 can make people take your presence for granted. Prioritize self-care and set limits on how much you give without receiving. Communicate openly. If you feel like you're carrying the relationship, express your feelings honestly instead of silently resenting the imbalance. By making these small shifts, you'll start to see who genuinely values you and is willing to meet you halfway, and who has simply grown accustomed to your endless effort. The hedonic adaptation trap: why people lose interest over time. The psychological principle at play. Humans are wired to adapt, not just to challenges but also to pleasures and excitement. This process, known as hedonic adaptation, means that over time we become accustomed to things that once thrilled us, and they start to feel ordinary or even unnoticed. This phenomenon is why people often lose interest in things they once loved, whether it's a new relationship, a dream job, or even a material possession. How this plays out in everyday life? Example: the good morning text that lost its spark. Think back to the first time your partner sent you a heartfelt good morning text. It felt special, right? It gave you butterflies, made you smile, and reassured you that they were thinking of you. But as the texts kept coming every day, by the 100th time, it became routine. By the 200th time, you might barely acknowledge it, or even feel indifferent to it. It's not that the message itself changed, it's that your brain stopped registering it as exciting. This is the power of hedonic adaptation. The same thing happens with grand gestures, compliments, and acts of love. When something becomes predictable, it starts to lose its impact. Why people seem to ignore the ones they love. Many times when people start to seem distant in relationships, it's not because they care any less. It's because their brain no longer perceives the attention as novel or urgent. This happens in all areas of life. In relationships, the spark of a new romance fades as both partners settle into routine. In careers, the excitement of landing your dream job wears off as the daily grind sets in. In personal life, the thrill of a new car, home, or hobby diminishes once it becomes part of the norm. Humans crave excitement, change, and novelty. When things become too predictable, we start to overlook them, even if they're valuable. The fix: how to keep things fresh and engaging. Introduce novelty. Small changes can reignite excitement. Try a new activity together, surprise your partner, or switch up your routine. The brain pays more attention to things that feel unpredictable. Shift focus to your own growth. Instead of constantly trying to hold someone's attention, focus on personal development. When you grow, evolve, and bring new energy into a relationship, your presence remains exciting and engaging. Create space for desire. Sometimes, a little distance helps. If you're always present, your absence is never felt. Give space for the other person to miss you and appreciate your presence. Express gratitude and awareness. If you notice yourself taking someone or something for granted, make an effort to reignite appreciation. A simple shift in perspective can make the familiar feel special again. By understanding hedonic adaptation, you can break the cycle of emotional complacency, ensuring that your relationships, experiences, and passions remain fresh and fulfilling. The paradox of certainty. Why people chase what's uncertain. The psychological principle at play. The human mind is wired to crave what feels uncertain and overlook what feels guaranteed. This is why we often find ourselves obsessing over the things and people we're unsure about, while taking for granted those who are consistently there for us. The less certainty we have about someone, the more we think about them. How this plays out in everyday life. A delayed text makes us anxious, but an immediate response feels normal. When someone takes hours to respond, we overanalyze it. Are they busy, losing interest, talking to someone else? But when someone replies right away, we barely think twice about it. It's expected. Someone slightly out of reach becomes mysterious and attractive. A person who isn't always available creates curiosity. Their time feels more valuable, and we find ourselves wanting their attention more. Someone who's always available is perceived as less urgent. If we know someone will always answer, always show up, and always be there, we might stop feeling the need to actively seek their attention. Not because we don't care, but because their presence is a given, not a mystery to solve. This is why the one who loves you most often gets ignored, not because they aren't valuable, but because their certainty removes the element of desire. The fix: how to regain balance. If you feel like you're being ignored despite giving your best, the solution isn't to chase harder, it's to rebalance the dynamic. Stop being predictable. Let there be moments of absence so your presence feels meaningful again. If you're always available, take a step back and allow others to reach out to you. Balance effort. Relationships should be mutual. Invest in people who reciprocate, and stop overgiving to those who don't. The right people will meet you halfway. Embrace uncertainty. Instead of fearing it, use it to your advantage. Healthy space in relationships allows attraction, excitement, and appreciation to grow. Shift focus inward. Your worth is not defined by someone else's response. True confidence comes from how you see yourself, not from how someone treats you. Final thoughts. Attraction is about perception. Attraction isn't just about love. It's about psychology. Understanding these patterns can help you navigate relationships with clarity and confidence, so you never feel powerless again. Now, what do you think? Have you experienced this paradox in your own life? Let's discuss in the comments.